His last moments on Earth were spent in a violent, rain-lashed urban thunderstorm. Huddled amongst a sea of umbrellas, he used his briefcase as a futile shield. This miserable end to a long day was not the life he had envisioned. Yet he clutched his wallet, a small reward giving him a reason to smile. He dreamed of buying a new novel and reading it in his warm, cozy bed. But on his way home, this simple, pleasant daydream was abruptly shattered. A brilliant bolt of lightning descended from the heavens, and his life was over. He awoke in a strange, empty void, wondering if this was the afterlife. Or at least that is what should have happened. Instead, a towering old man appeared, bowing and apologizing profusely. Shizuru was bewildered, asking the strangely familiar man if they had met. The old man looked away, guilt etched on his weary face. He introduced himself as a thunder god, admitting he'd accidentally smote him. The god acknowledged that this was a completely unreasonable way for a life to end. As a form of atonement for his fatal and careless mistake, he offered Shizuru an incredible chance to be reincarnated in another world. The fantastical words echoed in Shizuru's mind, sparking a flicker of hope. Realization dawned, and he shouted the deity's name with pure, unadulterated excitement. He eagerly asked if it was a fantasy world of swords, magic, and heroines. To his delight, the god confirmed it, even offering his divine blessing. The god, amused by his passion, held up a hand to calm him down. He then presented a thick tome containing all knowledge of the new world. Shizuru began to flip through the pages, his anticipation growing with each one. Visions of a grand fantasy adventure, just like his novels, filled his mind. He stood absorbing the incredible possibilities of this second chance at life. It was a simple, classic tale of a hero's journey to become the strongest. He recalled his old life of quiet endurance, always suppressing his true self. With newfound resolve, he snapped the book shut and addressed the god. In this new world, he would finally act on his own will to help people. The thunder god listened intently, sensing the deep conviction in his voice. He made his one true wish. In this world, he wanted to be the protagonist. The god smiled, accepting his wish with a simple, satisfied nod. As the transfer to his new life began, he shouted a frantic farewell. His body was immediately enveloped in a brilliant, blinding torrent of light. A storm of golden lightning, the god's own power, consumed him completely. The light faded, leaving only a few lingering sparks in the empty void. Alone now, the god worried about the boy's reckless and naive enthusiasm. He poured himself a drink from a small wooden box, his expression troubled. "The rest is up to you, Shizuru," he murmured to the silent emptiness. Consciousness slowly returned to him in a disorienting haze of soft, warm light. His new eyes fluttered open for the first time, hearing his name spoken softly. He saw a beautiful woman and realized, with a jolt, he'd truly been reborn. This kind, beautiful, and seemingly wealthy woman was his new mother. He felt incredibly blessed to have been reborn into such a wonderful environment. But this idyllic scene was shattered as he was brought before a roaring ritual fire. A terrible feeling of dread began to wash over his infant consciousness. He realized with dawning horror that his perfect new life was a trap. His mother held him aloft, praying for the spirit of fire to bless her child. The intense heat made him panic. He was going to be burned to death. She cooed at him gently, completely misinterpreting his terrified, piercing screams. She thought his cries were tears of joy at receiving the sacred blessing. With a gentle smile, she prepared to continue the horrifying baptism by fire. He was going to die before he could even begin his journey as a hero. He let out a desperate, helpless wail, his small body trembling with fear. In his mind, he screamed for the only one who might be able to save him. Suddenly, a loud crash from behind made his mother turn in surprise. A knight burst into the chamber, yelling for Lady Alina to escape at once. A massive, terrifying dragon smashed its way through the crumbling stone wall. The word dragon echoed through the chamber as the beast let out a roar. His mother looked on, a strange, unnerving calm settling over her face. A dragon? His infant mind with its adult memories reeled from the situation. He silently cursed the thunder god for sending him to such a chaotic world. He looked up at his mother, seeing her serene and strangely unafraid expression. She soothed him, her faith in her protector, Glenn, absolutely unwavering. He felt a strange vibration, a steadfast courage coming from her body. Despite the imminent danger, her embrace was steady, warm, and reassuring. He realized in that moment that she was protecting him. Her love felt so warm. He had only just met this woman, his new mother, but a bond was forming. The massive beast peeked around a stone pillar, its eyes glowing with malice. It let out a deafening roar that shook the very foundations of the room. His mother flinched, but her protective grip on him never loosened. Peeking from the safety of his swaddling, his fear was suddenly gone. A powerful, primal urge to protect her surged through his tiny body. In that instant, a massive, glowing magic circle erupted beneath the beast. The dragon looked down, confused and startled by the sudden surge of power. A colossal bolt of divine lightning descended from the ceiling, striking it directly. The raw, untamed power of the thunder god's blessing coursed through its body. He knew his new life would be difficult, but he would protect everyone. With this incredible power, he vowed to become the strongest in the world. His divine energy spent, his infant eyes finally fluttered and closed. He drifted into an exhausted, peaceful sleep. The danger now passed. A night caught him, amazed to find the baby simply sleeping after the chaos. But another night cried out in alarm, his voice filled with panic. His mother, Elena, lay gravely injured amidst the rubble of the attack. He would forever be known by the title he earned that day, the Miracle Ash Dragon. His name was Shizuru, and his heroic story had only just begun. Several years later, in a grand estate, a maid's voice called for him to awaken. He mumbled from under his plush covers, begging for 5 more minutes of sleep. A cheerful voice threatened him with a tickle attack if he didn't get up. The maid threw open the heavy curtains, flooding his room with morning light. Now 7 years old, he greeted his personal attendant, Marl, with a bright smile. She gently reminded him of the busy schedule he had planned for the day. She moved to help him get dressed, as she always did every morning. He protested playfully, trying to pull away from her constant motherly fussing. Feigning hurt, she ran from the room with a dramatic, theatrical cry. He sighed, exasperated but secretly amused by her familiar, playful antics. Her name was Marl, and though officially his maid, she was so much more. A sweet memory showed her by his side since birth, a true older sister. He sighed with fond exasperation, a small smile on his face. He then turned to his reflection in the mirror, ready to face his new day. 7 years have passed since my reincarnation. I am now Shizuru of House for Flare. I admire my reflection, thanking the Thunder God for the excellent princely features. I wonder if that old god is doing all right, since I haven't seen him since. Sorry to keep you waiting, I say brightly. Shall we head to the dining hall? My maid Marl looks on with a bit of a pout. She straightens up with a sigh, composing herself for her formal duties. Marl tells me that while I'm capable, I don't act very noble-like. I could never let an underage girl dress me. Marl vows to help next time. I sit alone at the vast dining table, wishing I could eat with the staff. I recall telling them that eating by myself felt too spacious and wasteful. The class divide is strict here. I must act noble, but my commoner soul rebels. Marl informs me that my father, Glenn Sama, wishes to speak with me later. I'm surprised. A summons from my father is quite rare. My eyes sparkle. Could this be my chance to finally start studying magic? I declare that of course I'm excited. I'm aiming to be the strongest mage. Marl smiles, finding me reliable, but doubts that's what the meeting is about. She reminds me that magic is dangerous, but then adds that I am a special case. I listen silently, her words giving me pause. I explain that in this kingdom, nobles are blessed with one of 6 elemental affinities. Usually children inherit their parents' element. My father and brother are both fire mages. Marl cheerfully confirms that the prestigious Four Flare house is known for its fire magic. Everyone in my family wields fire, but I am different. I was the first in history to receive the blessing of thunder, a closely guarded secret. When Marl says the lady, my inner self panics. She doesn't mean my mother. My father has 2 wives, the first is Elizabeth, and the second is my mother, Elena. Their relationship isn't dramatic. I actually think my stepmother is a good person. However, she is incredibly strict, pushing a rigorous education on me. Marl notes my stress is showing. My stepmother's lectures are intense. She suggests my stepmother's just worried. I think Marl finds her scary too. Marl jokes that servants who mess up are rumored to be exiled to the frontier. She immediately claps her hands over her mouth, realizing her mistake. An awkward silence hangs in the air after her unfortunate comment. She panics, apologizing for what she made me think about. She tries to cheer me up, reminding me I defeated the Dragon of Calamity. My expression darkens. I may have been an infant, but I remember it all. The memory of the sinister, armored dragon flashes in my mind. I recall the immense, terrifying power that welled up from within me. I clutch a pendant, thinking with a heavy heart, and it was all my fault. Marl calls my name, her voice laced with concern. I quickly force a smile, pretending nothing is wrong as we reach the dining hall. Suddenly, I stop in my tracks, my eyes widening in surprise. "Mother!" I exclaim, seeing her sitting in the sunlit room. She smiles, explaining that she felt well enough to come down for a meal. I think of how she was paralyzed from the waist down in the dragon attack. She says that getting to see me makes this a truly good day. Her hands gently cup my face in a warm, loving gesture. She marvels at how much I've grown, her expression full of affection. I joke that it's only been 3 days, asking if I'm in a growth spurt. Feeling a bit embarrassed, I gently ask her to stop. She teases me for still being so tense around her. In the background, Marl giggles that I act so much like a child around my mother. I shoot a silent, comical glare at Marl over my mother's shoulder. I realize she can sense my anxiety. Mothers are truly amazing. She brightly asks her little gentleman if he will escort her to the table. Of course, I reply with a slight blush, my heart swelling. I gently take my mother's hand in mine. I look at her pale face, knowing she spends her days inside, away from the sun. I think of my past life's parents and the deep love I've grown for this new mother. I vow to save her, to see her walk in the sunlight once again. To do that, I must train in secret, finding a place where no one can see. I remember hearing that childhood is the best time to learn new things. I can't afford to wait until I'm 12 to attend the Magic Academy. I greet the tiny spirits floating around me, ready for another day of training. As a baby, I couldn't move, but I could always feel the spirits' presence. I remember reaching out, surrounded by their glowing energy. I soon learned that I could communicate with them by offering my mana. Looking back, I realized I was doing something quite dangerous by training alone. Since infancy, I've pushed my magic to its absolute limit, day after day. As a result of all that secret, relentless training, I gained immense power, enough to perform lightning boost, body reinforcement. I feel satisfied that I can now activate the ability smoothly. A small crater in the ground marks the force of my practice blow. I push off the ground, testing my newfound superhuman speed and strength. Dashing through the forest, I effortlessly kick off a tree trunk. I leap gracefully between branches, pleased that I'm getting the hang of it. After landing, I decide it's time for the next step in my training. Arcs of raw, untamed lightning crackle in the air before me. I focus the energy into my hand, creating a blade of pure electricity, my sword of thunder. I hold the crackling sword, a goofy, satisfied grin on my face. Having my own original weapon is the absolute height of fantasy romance. I practice morphing the blade into different, more complex shapes. The blade dissolves. I realize mastering such transformations will take time. It's not like in manga, where characters can change weapons in an instant. I sigh, frustrated that reality isn't quite so simple. I know that in a real battle, a 1-second delay could be fatal. I pant heavily, feeling the strain of the magical exertion. Collapsing on the grass, I decide that's enough for today. The time limit is a weakness. I let out a long sigh, feeling the weight of all I have yet to do. Lying back, I think about how tough it is to train in secret. It would be a total disaster if anyone were to find me out here. I shudder, imagining the terrifying silhouette of my stepmother discovering my secret. I sit up, suddenly remembering that my father summoned me. I walk back toward the estate, wondering what my father could possibly want. I knock on the heavy study door, announcing my arrival. A deep voice from within acknowledges me. "Is that you, Shizuru?" My father, Glenn, looks up from his chair and tells me to come in. This is Glenn Forflair, a legendary hero of the Demon War. I look up at the imposing, powerful man before me. A title card appears over the scene. I think, that is my... The final panel closes in on Glenn's sharp, assessing eye. In his father's grand study, Shizuru faces the legendary hero, Glenn Forflair. Glenn casually invites his son to sit, asking how he has been doing. Shizuru replies with polite reserve that he has been doing quite normally. Glenn laughs heartily, praising his son's precocious skill in a mock battle. He remarks that Shizuru's cheeky attitude reminds him of his own youth. Shizuru internally scoffs, thinking his father was far more of a delinquent. Glenn eagerly offers to share some of his grand, heroic war stories. He sighs, wistfully recalling how much more fun his adventuring days were. Now his days are filled with the boring duties of managing the territory. Shizuru reflects that his father feels less like a parent and more like a friend. Glenn's playful demeanor fades as he gets to the real reason for the summons. He reveals that he knows Shizuru has been secretly reading books on magic. With a knowing and sly grin, he leans in closer to his son. He adds the damning accusation that Shizuru has been practicing magic alone. Shizuru freezes, realizing his secret is out and expecting a harsh lecture. He tries a desperate gambit, feigning innocent, childlike ignorance. Glenn stares back, his face a mask of pure, comical disgust. He explodes in anger, telling his son not to flaunt his cuteness. Shizuru sighs, understanding that his childish ruse has failed completely. Glenn senses leaking mana, accusing him of preparing to attack his own father. Shizuru quickly denies it, saying his stepmother would be far too frightening. At the mere mention of his wife, Glenn immediately backs down with a sigh. He explains he didn't call for a lecture, but to share some good news. He reminds Shizuru he'll soon be 8, old enough to take responsibility. Shizuru's heart pounds. He realizes this must be about his magic studies. He eagerly agrees, declaring he will take any responsibility for the family. Glenn beams, telling him he can take over as acting lord tomorrow. Shizuru is left completely speechless by the utterly absurd proposition. He protests loudly, accusing his father of trying to shirk his duties. The young boy puffs his cheeks in frustration at his father's laziness. He threatens to tell his stepmother that Glenn is slacking off on his work. He then slyly mentions hearing a cute girl's voice at a bar recently. Glenn freezes in abject terror, demanding to know how he knew about that. Shizuru recalls how he developed a unique spell to track people. Using spirits like radio waves, he named the technique Thunder Search. He had only tested it on Glenn by chance and was shocked by what he found. He thinks he should stop, but his father's behavior is testing him. Glenn bursts into laughter, insisting it was all a joke to tease him. He finally admits he intended to permit his magic practice all along. Shizuru asks if he can convince his stepmother, and Glenn confidently agrees. Overjoyed, Shizuru thanks him, but adds a playful threat about the bar. He basks in the happy thought of finally using magic openly. But his father's voice suddenly cuts through his moment of bliss. Glenn leans forward with a wide grin, announcing more good news. Shizuru's mind is still buzzing with excitement about his magic training. His father tells him to pay attention, as this is the main topic. Glenn announces with a grand, theatrical flourish that his engagement is decided. He adds cheerfully that the meeting is tomorrow, so he should prepare. Shizuru's entire world comes to a screeching halt in a moment of pure shock. The next morning, Marl bursts in, announcing it is a very special day. Shizuru groans from his bed, still exhausted from his talk with Glenn. He complains that his father decided everything far too suddenly. With a yawn, he admits he always expected an arranged marriage would happen. He was just a little surprised by how soon it came to be. His father had explained his fiancée is from the prestigious Lorelei house. Shizuru was surprised to learn she was the same age as him. Glenn had gushed that she was both beautiful and impeccably well-mannered. Then came the most shocking detail. She is the infamous blessingless girl. Glenn was surprised his son already knew, but Shizuru had done his research. The girl was born unable to receive any of the 6 elemental blessings. Her rare condition became a prominent rumor around the same time as his own. Glenn had sternly warned him never to mention her condition in her presence. He had also warned him not to bring it up with her doting father. Shizuru had voiced concerns, but Glenn told him to just be kind to her. Glenn had laughed it off, but Shizuru knew there was more to it. He realized it was a political move to neutralize his own powerful blessing. Deciding to play along, he resolved to act happy for his father. Glenn had been absolutely delighted by his son's feigned enthusiasm. His thoughts are shattered by Glenn's booming voice yelling his name. Marl fusses over Shizuru, gushing about his handsome new formal suit. He straightens his tie, suspecting that everyone knew about this before him. He confronts Marl, but she just turns away, whistling innocently. She swoons, wondering aloud what his beautiful fiancé will be like. Shizuru hopes she is a good person, but worries she might be arrogant. Marl offers to lend him her romance novels, but he quickly declines. She insists she has normal books too, not just the steamy ones. He feels anxious, thinking his vast knowledge from past life novels should help. Marl reassures him, saying he's so cool that any girl would fall for him. Her words give him a new resolve to experience the romance he never had. A carriage arrives, and Glenn warmly greets the distinguished Magnus Lorelei. Lord Magnus turns to the carriage to quickly introduce his daughter. A small, gloved hand appears as a young girl gracefully steps down. Shizuru is instantly captivated, his eyes widening at the sight of her. The girl, Lucina, offers a perfect curtsy, her dark hair flowing. She introduces herself politely, leaving Shizuru completely tongue-tied. Glenn has to physically nudge his stunned, blushing son back to reality. Shizuru hastily bows, stammering that it is an honor to finally meet her. Lucina replies that she has heard of his reputation and is deeply grateful. Glenn jokes about how different the poised girl is from his own wild son. Shizuru is mortified, but Glenn continues to tease him about his true nature. Lord Magnus simply smiles, remarking that it sounds very interesting. Shizuru notices his father's smile is calculating, not truly happy. Glenn suggests the children go play while the adults have a discussion. Shizuru is horrified at the prospect of being left alone with her so suddenly. He panics, having absolutely no idea what they are supposed to talk about. Glenn announces that Lucina will be staying at the estate for 3 months. Lucina asks him to please call her by her first name, Lucina. He agrees, a light blush on his cheeks, asking her to call him Shizuru. However, she turns to him and states firmly that she cannot do that. Shizuru is taken aback, confused by her sudden and cold refusal. In the garden, Lucina explains that Shizuru has saved her from a hopeless situation. She declares her happiness, vowing never to be a burden on his glorious future. Her face falls into shadow as she states their engagement is not one of equals. She has resigned herself to being a convenient partner to support his ambitions. Shizuru is utterly stunned by her heartbreaking and rehearsed confession. He asks if this is what the people around her have always told her. Her stoic composure finally cracks, and tears well up in her eyes. "No," he interrupts firmly, "this is my own will." He decides to act, telling her it's time for them to go. A flicker of hope appears as she agrees with a small smile. He looks at her with a confident, playful smirk, telling her to be prepared. Pointing to himself, he makes a heroic vow to absolutely make her smile. Hiding nearby, Marl the maid swoons, mimicking his grand romantic declaration. The moment the words are out, Shizuru is hit by intense, blushing embarrassment. Later, Marl gushes about how splendid he's become, much to his annoyance. A quick flashback shows Marl had been secretly watching their entire conversation. She excitedly asks if his bold statement was a confession of love at first sight. He becomes completely flustered, waving his hands and frantically denying everything. His expression turns serious as he thinks about the true reason for his actions. In Lucina's loneliness, he sees a painful reflection of his own past self. He clutches his head, mortified by his impulsive words, while Marl finds it cute. He asks Marl for advice, determined to find a way to connect with Lucina. With renewed purpose, he pumps his fist, resolving to become her true friend. His attempts to make conversation fail when she claims to have no preferences. She politely dismisses his concern for her well-being, saying it's unnecessary. She refuses his invitation to go out, believing her presence would hinder him. Utterly defeated, he collapses onto a sofa, groaning that she must hate him. The emotional strain is too much, and he face-plants into the cushions. Marl thoughtfully realizes Lucina isn't being hateful, just overly considerate. She knows Lucina is pushing herself to the breaking point to avoid being a bother. Shizuru listens intently, realizing that Marl's assessment is correct. He reflects that a 7-year-old girl should be allowed to be selfish and spoiled. He imagines the constant pressure she must have endured, forcing her to be this way. He wonders if any of the adults in her life, even her father, truly see her pain. His eyes narrow with a cold fury at the injustice of her situation. He clenches his fist, angry at himself for being unable to save this one girl. His frustration causes his immense magical power to surge uncontrollably. The energy bursts forth in a flash as Marl cries out his name in alarm. He collapses, chiding himself for his pathetic loss of control. He looks up, exhausted but with a new understanding and resolve in his eyes. He sincerely thanks Marl for her insight and help. She advises him to take things slowly, as they've only just met. A brilliant idea suddenly occurs to the quick-witted maid. She reminds him that his 8th birthday is just around the corner. A look of realization dawns on Shizuru's face. He had completely forgotten. Marl explains the simple secret. Girls love special events and sweets. A light bulb goes off in Shizuru's head. He finally has a plan. He calls her a genius but politely declines her offer of romance novels. Full of new purpose, he dashes off to begin his preparations. Marl waves goodbye, happy to see her energetic young master back to his usual self. On the day of the party, Lord Magnus and Lucina arrive to offer their congratulations. A beaming Shizuru thanks them warmly for coming to his celebration. He politely gestures for his important guests to enter the hall. Lord Magnus excuses himself to mingle, promising to speak with him again later. Shizuru's older brother Homura approaches him from behind. Homura questions the small scale of the party, but Shizuru explains it is for Lucina. The household staff frets that the modest party isn't grand enough for the guests. A group of arrogant young nobles mock the Flair family for their lack of influence. His father, Glenn, tells him to ignore them and just enjoy his special day. Shizuru looks over the buffet, a casual affair he arranged for everyone's comfort. He is pleased that the relaxed format allows the servants to enjoy themselves too. He notices the head chef looking anxious and approaches him to offer reassurance. The chef confesses his worry that the guests might not like the food. Shizuru quietly gestures for the nervous chef to look across the room. He points out Lord Magnus and Lucina, who are just about to try the food. Their faces light up with genuine surprise and delight at the delicious flavors. Shizuru and the chef share a secret, triumphant look. Their plan is a success. The chef praises Shizuru, saying his unique menu ideas were worth the effort. Shizuru modestly insists that the success is due to the chef's incredible skill. He thinks back on how he sometimes gets homesick for the food of his past life. He recalls introducing Earth's cuisine, like omurice, which became a household favorite. With the main course a success, he signals the butler to begin the next phase. The butler wheels out a large trolley, getting the attention of the guests. He announces the arrival of the dessert course, revealing a spectacular display. Lord Magnus gives a hesitant Lucina an encouraging nudge to go with Shizuru. Shizuru invites her to the balcony for dessert, and she shyly agrees. On the quiet balcony, he pulls out a chair for her like a perfect gentleman. She is completely flustered by the gesture, feeling she is unworthy of such kindness. He gently insists, telling her it is proper for a host to honor his guest. Overwhelmed and blushing, she reluctantly takes her seat at the small table. He asks if she enjoyed the food, and she admits she was surprised by it all. He proudly unveils a special dessert platter he had prepared just for her. The platter is a beautiful arrangement of cheesecake, cookies, and shimmering pudding. Her eyes sparkle with a wonder and delight she cannot conceal. He proudly tells her that he personally helped bake the cookies. With a hopeful and encouraging smile, he offers one to her. She is taken aback by his forwardness, her mind reeling in surprise. He worries he was too informal, but she's simply unaccustomed to such casualness. He gently reassures her that it's okay, his expression kind and patient. He points out that no one is watching, just as Marl gives a secret thumbs up. She glances around nervously before finally accepting the cookie from his hand. She takes a small, tentative bite, the flavor surprising her. The sound of her chewing is the only sound on the quiet balcony. Her eyes widen as she murmurs that the cookie is absolutely delicious. He celebrates internally, then eagerly offers her a taste of his favorite pudding. She tries to refuse, saying she can eat it by herself. He insists with a sparkling, earnest gaze that she cannot bring herself to refuse. She is completely overwhelmed by his charming and persistent nature. Closing her eyes, she accepts the spoonful of pudding he offers. She exclaims that it's also delicious, and he tells her it's called pudding. Lucina's wide, sparkling eyes silently plead for another bite of the delicious pudding. She is completely flustered, as Shizuru playfully insists on feeding her himself. "Here you go," Shizuru says with a bright, encouraging smile, offering the spoon. As they eat, she murmurs how delicious it is, and he teases her for being mean. She finishes the dessert, her eyes closed in satisfaction as she thanks him for the meal. On the balcony, she admits it was wonderful, though she felt a little embarrassed. Her gaze drifts to the sprawling estate below, and she whispers how beautiful it is. A soft blush touches her cheeks as she takes in the magnificent, starlit view. Shizuru watches her, momentarily captivated by her genuine, unguarded happiness. He snaps back to reality, quickly apologizing for staring at her so intently. She worries she's the only one having fun, but he insists he wanted to do this. He pauses, asking her to confirm if she just said she was having fun. She turns to him, her face breaking into a radiant, heartfelt smile. "Yes, very much," she says. The sight of her true smile leaves Shizuru completely breathless and stunned. Overcome with emotion, he impulsively grabs her hands, promising more fun next time. Her eyes shine with happiness as she gives a soft, simple yes in reply. They stand together on the balcony, looking out at the beautiful, star-filled night sky. Sometime later, Shizuru sits reading in a lounge, thinking that her departure was inevitable. His thoughts are on Lucina, who has now left the Forflair estate. Marl sighs wistfully, lamenting that Lucina left just as they were getting along. Shizuru snaps his book shut, explaining the cold logistical reasons for her journey. He adds that he'll see her again soon, but admits he is a little lonely. He reflects on how she has slowly begun to open up since his birthday party. He resolves not to mope and decides to distract himself with something productive. He leaps to his feet, declaring his intent to focus on special training, surprising Marl. Marl notes how happy he seems, and he cheerfully agrees that every day is fun. He blurts out that he no longer has to practice magic in secret, then freezes in horror. He recalls his father somehow managing to convince his stern stepmother to approve his training. He excitedly tells Marl he's been approved for combat practice in the Demon Forest. Marl turns her back to him, her voice dangerously flat as she replies, "Is that so?" He tentatively asks his mate if she is angry with him. She insists through gritted teeth that she isn't angry at all, despite her menacing aura. He offers a meek and sincere apology for worrying her. Marl's expression is a perfect storm of annoyance and deep concern for his safety. She relents, admitting she's just worried, but trusts that he will be fine. To change the subject, he boasts about how well his magic training is progressing. He almost reveals he's been practicing for years, catching himself just in time. He awkwardly tries to cover his mistake by talking about a bee spirit he caught. Marl stares at the comically angry-looking bee spirit with wide, terrified eyes. She backs away, wagging a finger and sternly warning him not to overdo it. As she leaves, he thinks how close he came to his secret being fully discovered. Once alone, he pumps his fist, giddy with excitement for some real combat. The door to the room suddenly slams open with a loud bang. He turns around, assuming Marl has returned because she forgot something. Instead, his older brother Homura bursts in, shouting his name. Shizuru is shocked. His eyes are wide with disbelief at his brother's unexpected appearance. This is Homura for Flair, the heir who is supposed to be at the Magic Academy. Shizuru chides him, asking what he's doing here during his summer vacation. Homura ignores him, his own eyes wide with excitement, saying he's heard the news. He gets right in Shizuru's face, excitedly demanding to be taken to the demon forest. Shizuru calmly points out that Homura is supposed to be at his dormitory. Homura dismisses this, declaring that as the four Flair brothers, they should stick together. Shizuru reminds his brother of a time he was used as a decoy and abandoned. Homura gets angry, shouting that Shizuru's arrogant attitude is just like their father's. Shizuru reflects that despite their complicated relationship, they still get along well. He sighs, deciding it can't be helped, and relents to his brother's demand. He offers a deal. Homura can come if he gets their stepmother's permission. As Homura dashes off confidently, Shizuru prays, thinking it's absolutely impossible. Homura returns looking suspiciously cheerful, much to Shizuru's utter amazement. He beams, announcing his brilliant new plan. Let's run away from home. Shizuru is unimpressed, thinking of all the reasons that's a terrible idea. Homura believes that brute force is the only way to solve this problem. He tries to physically drag Shizuru along, but his brother firmly refuses to go. Homura clicks his tongue in annoyance at his younger brother's defiance. He's shocked to find Shizuru is using body reinforcement and won't budge an inch. Homura's eyes light up with a competitive fire as he realizes his brother is using magic. Shizuru coolly notes that Homura, despite being older, is still an immature magic user. Homura concedes that he can't win a contest of pure strength at the moment. He gets excited again, asking if Shizuru has a better plan in mind. Shizuru's thought about his brother's immaturity lingers in the air. Homura suggests his next brilliant idea, simply knocking out the guards and escaping. Shizuru calls him a musclehead, knowing that plan will get them caught instantly. He tells Homura that while his plan isn't bad, he has an even better one. He proposes a stealth mission, allowing them to explore the forest freely. Homura thoughtfully considers the idea of a proper stealth mission. Shizuru lays out the details. They will move separately to avoid suspicion. He finishes his explanation with a smile, knowing his simple-minded brother will agree. Homura is completely sold on the plan, trusting his younger brother's strategy. He dashes off, telling Shizuru he'll go first and see him at the rendezvous point. Shizuru calmly closes the door behind his overeager brother. He sits down on a plush sofa, relaxing with a book and a cup of tea. A moment later, he hears the distinct sounds of his brother being caught outside. He muses to himself about how quickly Homura was discovered. He silently apologizes to his brother, knowing he can't risk losing his own permission. He sips his tea, thinking that this whole affair makes him seem like the villain. The day arrives, and Shizuru stands with his escort at the edge of the demon forest. The lead knight reminds him that it's his first day and not to go too deep. To his complete shock, Homura appears, looking very pleased with himself. Homura cheerfully calls out to him, saying he's late to the party. The knights are confused while Shizuru frantically denies any knowledge of this. Homura proudly explains that he snuck out early in the morning to join them. He apologizes to Shizuru for the trouble he caused by getting caught. Shizuru realizes his brother spun a story about him being lonely to get permission. Homura rallies the group, ready to charge into the forest, as the knights look worried. Shizuru, initially annoyed, realizes this development might actually be convenient for him. He watches as the knights focus all their protective attention on his brother. He confirms his suspicion. The guards are prioritizing the heir above all else. A knight points out a distraction, and Homura excitedly runs towards it. A guard reaches for Shizuru, but he has already vanished into the undergrowth. Of course not, brother, Shizuru thinks, a wild grin on his face as he slips away. Homura watches in shock as his brother vanishes, telling the knights to protect him. With a shout, Homura easily breaks free from the guards who try to restrain him. Shizuru runs through the woods, thankful his brother's antics created the perfect diversion. His senses suddenly flare as he detects a faint trace of magical energy. He deftly climbs a tree, spotting the source of the power. There, he thinks. His earlier reconnaissance with Thunder Search had already given him a rough map. He lands softly, knowing from his senses that a pack of monsters is nearby. He confirms to himself that a group of monsters is definitely in this area. A sudden rustling in the bushes ahead immediately captures his full attention. He wonders if his brother somehow caught up, but quickly dismisses the thought. No, he thinks to himself, that should be impossible for him. A grotesque green creature emerges. Shizuru instantly identifies it as a goblin. He stares at the creature, realizing this is his first encounter with a real monster. The goblin glares with a raw, killing intent he's never felt from training partners. A grim, excited smile spreads across his face. So this is real combat. His inner fanboy emerges, excitedly wondering which of his magic weapons to try first. The goblin lets out a low, guttural snarl, unimpressed by the boy's hesitation. Taking advantage of the opening, the monster lunges forward with surprising speed. Its powerful fist connects solidly with Shizuru's cheek, sending him stumbling back. He is momentarily stunned by the sharp and very real pain of the blow. That surprised me, he thinks, realizing he can't afford to overthink in battle. He clenches his fist, understanding that this was a harsh but necessary lesson. This has been a good learning experience, he declares to himself with new resolve. His eyes suddenly widen as his senses pick up on movement all around him. He looks up calmly, assessing that he is now surrounded by 20 goblins. A thin, dangerous smile crosses his lips as he prepares for the real fight. Alone in the clearing, he coolly wonders what his first move should be. The knights arrive to find Shizuru standing unharmed amidst a field of goblin corpses. He cheerfully reassures them he's fine, dismissing the blood on his face as splashback. A knight asks if he defeated them all, and he casually confirms that he did. They are stunned that he single-handedly killed so many monsters without any help. As he savors his victory, a sudden troubling thought crosses Shizuru's mind. He notices that the number of monsters in the area is decreasing unnaturally fast. His eyes widen in dawning horror as he realizes who the cause must be. He sharply asks where his brother is, and the knights flinch with guilt. He points an accusatory finger, declaring his brother is the culprit behind the chaos. He urges the knights forward, telling them that his brother went this way. The knights marvel at how reliable Shizuru is, despite only being 8 years old. Shizuru frantically yells that if they don't hurry, his brother will steal his kills. Their search is halted by a massive beast, and Shizuru asks if everyone is all right. A knight identifies it as an ogre, realizing they have no hope of winning. The lead knight gives his men a grim, knowing look. They understand his silent command. He declares that as knights of House for Flare, they will protect their lord. With a unified shout, the knights rally, ready to make their final stand. Shizuru facepalms, asking them to please calm down from their passionate display. He calmly places a hand on the ground, preparing to cast a protective spell. A dome of crackling lightning erupts, surrounding the completely shocked knights. He cheerfully tells them his thunder barrier will keep them perfectly safe inside. He tells them to leave this to him and dashes towards the monster alone. The knights cry out for him to stop, terrified for their young master's safety. The ogre watches him approach, as if it has been waiting patiently for him. Shizuru faces the massive beast, a confident smile on his face. Shall we begin? Suddenly, Homura yells that he won't let his brother have all the fun. He delivers a flying kick, sending Shizuru tumbling while complaining about his aching body. Shizuru looks up, shocked and annoyed by his older brother's dramatic interruption. Homura scolds him for not reading the mood, since he came to the rescue. He declares that Shizuru has defeated enough and should leave the rest to him. He tells his cute little brother to stand back and watch him work. From inside the barrier, the knights plead for the two lords to stop bickering. The ogre flexes its massive hand, its patience clearly wearing thin. A deep, guttural, and intelligent voice suddenly rumbles through the clearing. The menacing sound echoes ominously through the otherwise silent forest. Homura stops, asking his brother if he heard that strange voice just now. The knights tremble, realizing the voice belongs to something far more dangerous than an ogre. The brothers, momentarily distracted, ask each other what is going on. The ogre itself speaks, agreeing with their plan to fight it first. Shizuru points, distracting his brother for just a moment to gain an advantage. Homura shouts in frustration as Shizuru outmaneuvers him yet again in their squabble. Shizuru knows that in terms of raw power, his brother is no match for him. The ogre looks on, stunned, as Shizuru boasts about his superior speed. In a flash of movement, Shizuru disarms his brother, declaring himself the winner. He smiles triumphantly, having proven his point in their little contest of skill. Homura grabs his own dagger, admitting defeat but declaring that this is his win. The ogre's heavy chain swings dangerously close to a distracted Shizuru. Shizuru is shocked to see his brother's ornate sword flying through the air. He can't believe Homura would throw his precious sword from such a distance. Homura catches it with a grin, cheekily calling his brother a musclehead. He explains that this was his plan all along, a simple retrieval maneuver. He points to the High Ogre, officially claiming it as his opponent. Shizuru, with a weary sigh, agrees to handle the other emerging threats. From the woods, monstrous, wolf-like creatures begin to slink into the clearing. The knights identify them as wild dogs, drawn by the scent of goblin blood. Shizuru calmly raises his hand, forming a weapon from pure, crackling lightning. A knight realizes with awe that Shizuru's claims about the goblins were true. A volley of electric arrows streaks through the air, striking down the beasts. He fluidly morphs his weapon into a spear, continuing his relentless assault. The knight confirms that Shizuru did indeed defeat the entire horde by himself. Shizuru summons a new weapon, preparing for the next wave of attacks. He reflects that real combat is the best teacher, learning from his earlier mistakes. As he fights, he glances over at his brother's ongoing battle. Homura watches him, looking excited and eager for a real challenge of his own. A knight suddenly cries out a desperate warning for Shizuru to watch his back. The High Ogre looms over him as a knight's hand gestures for him to flee. Shizuru's face lights up with a brilliant, sparkling smile of pure exhilaration. The knights are horrified, thinking he looks like he's just found a new toy. Shizuru senses this creature is different. It's enjoying the prospect of a good fight. He notes with a smirk that the monster has a very condescending attitude. This confirms for him that the ogre is not just a mindless beast. He prepares himself to face the intelligent and powerful monster head-on. He declares to the ogre that the weapon he will use is his own fist. With the High Ogre looming, Shizuru declares this will be his weapon. A nearby knight can only utter a single syllable of complete disbelief. The monster's massive fist is met by the boy's impossibly small one. The ogre swings its huge clawed hand down with killing intent. Shizuru dashes forward, his face a mask of fierce, unyielding determination. His lightning-charged fist connects with the ogre's thick armored leg. A knight cries out at his recklessness, but Shizuru knows a child's strength isn't the issue. The lead knight, however, calmly tells his subordinate to simply watch. The High Ogre stumbles back, its face twisted in shock and agony. Shizuru smirks, thinking that this monster is weaker than his older brother. The impact is catastrophic, shattering the ogre's steel plating and bone. He lands gracefully on a nearby rock, preparing for his next move. Raising a crackling hand, he announces it is time for the finishing blow. With a powerful roar, he unleashes his ultimate technique. Flare Burst. A cataclysmic explosion of light and thunder completely engulfs the great beast. Homura arrives, noting with a grin that Shizuru's fight is over too. Shizuru glances over at the aftermath of his brother's own chaotic battle. He comments on how gruesome the pixelated remains of the monsters are. Homura's expression shifts as he prepares a witty, teasing retort. He asks if Shizuru is one to talk, and Shizuru simply agrees. A knight watches them, realizing the four Flare brothers are truly terrifying. Meanwhile, a carriage rattles through a different part of the forest. Inside, Lucina sits quietly, her gaze distant as the scenery rushes past. Her cheeks are flushed, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, lost in thought. Days later, an awkward silence hangs between them at the long dining table. The title page reads, "The Thunder Emperor's Trail." Lucina looks at him with gentle concern, asking if he is all right. Startled, he echoes her question, noticing the profound weariness in her eyes. She offers a polite, distant smile, suggesting they should just eat. Shizuru watches her, a troubled look on his face, knowing something is wrong. In a flashback, he had greeted her arriving carriage with an enthusiastic wave. He had happily welcomed her back, asking how her journey had been. His bright smile had vanished the moment he saw her expression. She stood beside her father, her face pale and her eyes shadowed with sorrow. Lord Magnus explained that his daughter was tired and needed to rest. Shizuru could only wish her well, his mind racing with concern. He knew her condition was not from the fatigue of a long journey. As he watched her walk away, he felt a deep sense of foreboding. Back in the present, he is certain something happened at her family home. Later, he sits alone in a lounge, determined to uncover the truth. He asks Marl if she found out what happened, and she confirms her investigation. He listens with rapt attention, his expression growing grim. Marl hesitates, knowing the news she bears is painful. She reveals Lucina's grandmother refused to accept the blessingless girl. Shizuru closes his eyes in disgust, thinking of their cruelty to a child. His hands clench into tight fists, crumpling the fabric of his trousers. He mutters about the shamelessness of the adults who would torment her. His mind flashes back to a sunnier time in the estate gardens. He and Lucina were sharing a peaceful afternoon tea in the gazebo. He had gently teased her, saying how happy she looked. Flustered, she had looked up, asking if that was really true. She clutched her teacup, admitting that perhaps it was. She hoped to hear stories of her late mother on her trip home. He remembers the innocent hope that had been shining in her eyes. Marl's voiceover explains that Lucina's mother, Maria, was born frail. She had defied everyone to give birth to Lucina, but lost her own life. He recalls Lucina's excitement to meet the grandparents who now scorned her. Back then, he had simply smiled gently at her sweet innocence. He had told her then that he would be lonely when she left. The sincere comment had left her completely flustered and blushing. He had chuckled, trying to play off his own earnestness. With puffed cheeks, she had told him to stop his teasing. He had apologized, admitting that his feelings were actually true. He suggested they should talk a lot more in the future. The warm memory ends with a sharp, painful cut to the present. She had agreed then with a radiant, beautiful, and hopeful smile. Shizuru is devastated, knowing how much she had looked forward to that trip. Marl watches him, her heart aching for her young master's pain. He thinks of his own mother and how he once saw a parallel with Lucina. But now he understands their situations were completely different. He lives a full life, celebrated as a miracle by a loving family. But Lucina's life has been one of isolation and sorrow. She lost her mother and is scorned, forced to live a life not her own. He wonders what he, who has lived so comfortably, can do for her. He looks up at Marl, who stands before him, her expression resolute. A brilliant idea seems to strike his trusted maid. She tells him that there is, in fact, something he can do. With a confident smile, she suggests he bring Lucina to live with them. Shizuru is stunned by the simple, perfect, and audacious solution. He thinks of Lucina, alone and trapped in the shadows. A single tear escapes her eye as she sits in solitude. He imagines bringing her into the warmth and light of his home. He flushes deeply as Marl asks if she said something strange. She becomes flustered, quickly trying to backtrack from her bold suggestion. He clutches his chest, a slow, brilliant realization dawning on him. His face lights up with renewed hope as he agrees it's the right thing to do. He claps his hands to his cheeks, his new resolve set. All right. He dashes past his surprised Marl, shouting his thanks as he goes. He stops suddenly, remembering one more important thing to say. With a beaming, heartfelt smile, he tells her that he loves her. Marl is left momentarily speechless by his sudden declaration. A fond smile graces her lips as she thinks he's still such a handful. The next morning dawns at the grand and sunlit four-flare estate. Shizuru finds Lucina in the hallway, greeting her with a bright smile. She bows her head, returning his greeting with a quiet, formal mumble. She looks up at him, a silent question in her tired eyes. He grins, telling her that breakfast is not in its usual place today. Confused, she asks where they are supposed to go instead. Without a word, he gently and firmly takes her small hand in his. He pulls her along with a cheerful, "This way," leading her towards a new beginning. With a determined stride, Shizuru leads a hesitant Lucina down the estate corridor. Leaning in close, he whispers their clandestine plan, sneaking out the main entrance. Lucina is taken aback, questioning his bold intention to simply sneak out. Two maids spot the children holding hands and share a warm, knowing smile. They overhear Lucina's confused comment that this isn't the way to breakfast. The maids' pleasant expressions instantly morph into ones of pure, utter shock. They call out to Shizuru, reminding him that he's already late for his meal. He turns to a still confused Lucina, telling her that for today, she's with him. With a clenched fist, he activates his lightning boost, his body crackling with energy. He tells her to hold on tight, though she feels she is already being held. In a blur of motion, he effortlessly sweeps her up into his arms. He offers a quick, cheerful apology for his rather ungentlemanly forwardness. Lucina's eyes swirl with dizziness as she cries out his name in surprise. She begs him to put her down, but he cheekily reminds her of his promise. With a single, powerful leap, he soars high over the estate's iron gates. Lucina looks up at him, her expression a mixture of awe and bewilderment. She lets out a startled cry, instinctively clutching him tighter as they fly. He smiles down at her and asks if she is ready for their adventure. The abandoned maids sigh, lamenting that their young master has done it again. They have escaped to the sprawling, walled castle town of Gallia, a four-flare territory. The cobblestone streets of the city are alive with the sounds of daily life. Lucina, now in a new dress, shyly calls out to Shizuru. He turns with a huge smile, telling her the new outfit suits her perfectly. The elderly tailor teases him for finally bringing a girl instead of sneaking out alone. Shizuru thanks the man and eagerly pulls a flustered Lucina towards the exit. He stops suddenly, remembering one last thing he needs to do before they leave. He stands behind Lucina, telling her to hold still for just a moment. With a satisfied sound, he finishes his task with practiced ease. He has tied her long hair into a neat, beautiful ponytail. She asks about his disguise and he explains they need to blend in. He rubs his hands together, gathering a small crackle of static electricity. He runs his charged hands through his hair, creating a spiky, playful style. With a charming smile, he extends his hand to her like a true gentleman. Blushing deeply, Lucina insists that she is perfectly capable of walking by herself. He points to the bustling street, warning that they could get separated in the crowd. She looks out at the throng of people, a bead of sweat on her cheek. He points to an archway, explaining that it is the entrance to the main street. He offers a reassuring, "Leave it to me," and she finally takes his hand. Once on the main street, Lucina marvels at the incredible number of people. Shizuru watches the scene with a fond smile, taking in the city's energy. He remarks that everyone seems so happy now that the war has finally ended. He notices Lucina has stopped walking, her gaze fixed on something nearby. He turns to her with a curious expression, asking what has caught her eye. She is watching a little girl excitedly asking her mother to buy her a toy. The little girl cheers with pure joy as her mother happily agrees. Shizuru sees a quiet, wistful longing in Lucina's eyes as she watches them. He gives her hand a gentle, reassuring squeeze to get her attention. She looks up at him, startled from her thoughts, a soft blush on her cheeks. With a brilliant, infectious smile, he encourages her to keep moving forward. Her sadness melts away, replaced by a radiant smile as she happily agrees. As they walk, Lucina recalls that he had mentioned a stealth mission. She asks if this outing is some kind of formal inspection of the territory. Shizuru turns his head, thinking for a moment before he answers her question. He admits that she is right, but he prefers to do things his own way. He explains that bringing guards is dangerous and creates too much distance from people. He thinks of the usual stuffy carriage ride that isolates nobles from the world. He declares with a grin that a formal, stuffy inspection just isn't any fun. Lucina realizes his method means they are unable to truly observe the populace. He points at her, agreeing that her observation isn't wrong at all. Inspired, Lucina clenches her fists, vowing to assist him in his noble investigation. Shizuru's nose twitches as a delicious, savory aroma wafts through the air. He excitedly tells her their first stop is a nearby food stall. The source of the smell is skewers of meat sizzling over hot coals. Shizuru confidently orders 2 grilled chicken skewers from the friendly vendor. The vendor's eyes light up as he notices the young couple before him. He laughs, teasingly asking Shizuru if he's on a date with a cute girl. A flustered Lucina tries to defend Shizuru's honor, saying he's no mere lad. Shizuru playfully covers her mouth, confirming that he is, in fact, just that. He tells her to be quiet, reminding her they are on an important investigation. The vendor hands over the skewers, warning the young couple that they're hot. Shizuru cheerfully fishes in his pouch, noting the price is 2 copper coins. He pays the man, who thanks him for his business with a friendly smile. He tells Lucina that it's a very reasonable price for such a tasty snack. They find a nearby bench, and he hands Lucina her share of the food. Lucina stares at the skewer, completely baffled by this unfamiliar street food. Shizuru worries for a moment, thinking that perhaps she doesn't like chicken. She asks where the knife and fork are, unsure of the proper etiquette. He smiles, explaining that you're supposed to turn it sideways to eat it. He demonstrates by taking a huge, hearty bite of his own skewer. He chews with obvious enjoyment, declaring it delicious and perfect with a beer. He has a brief moment of panic, realizing his utter lack of noble decorum. Lucina is completely frozen, shocked by his shockingly unrefined table manners. He thinks he's made a terrible mistake by offering such food to a lady. But then she glances around and sees that everyone else is eating the same way. A blush of understanding creeps up her cheeks as she realizes the local custom. Her heart pounding, she tells herself that this must be the proper way. She takes a confident bite, and Shizuru watches, relieved and pleasantly surprised. Her eyes go wide with delight as the wonderful savory flavor hits her. She enthusiastically praises the delicious taste and perfectly cooked texture of the chicken. Shizuru beams with pride, overjoyed that his choice was a success. After they finish their snack, he lets out a contented sigh. Lucina looks up, her attention drawn to a large building in the distance. She asks what the busy building is, and he explains it's the Adventurers Guild. He clarifies that unlike knights who serve lords, adventurers help the common folk. He continues, explaining that they are like heroes who protect everyone in the city. Lucina's eyes shine with pure admiration, calling it a truly wonderful profession. The distant ringing of bells interrupts their conversation, and she asks what it is. Shizuru guesses it's the sound of a wedding at the church down the street. Lucina's face lights up at the word wedding, her hands clasped in excitement. She looks at him, her eyes sparkling with romantic wonder and curiosity. Shizuru asks if they should go investigate, and Lucina gives an enthusiastic yes. The sound of bells guides them toward the grand facade of a stone church. A joyous couple emerges from the church, showered in a cascade of flower petals. Lucina watches the beautiful scene, her hands clasped in pure, unadulterated awe. She remarks on how beautiful it is and how incredibly happy the couple looks. While Lucina is distracted, Shizuru's keen senses suddenly detect something out of place. He spots a group of thugs in an alley, wondering if they've been marked. He uses a light thunder search, sensing the thugs but no one else. He glances at Lucina, whose face is flushed with pure, innocent joy. Just to be safe, he closes his eyes to increase his magical scan's precision. His enhanced senses are immediately flooded by a powerful and oppressive dark energy. A cold shock runs through him as he frantically tries to locate the source. This immense pressure isn't from the thugs. Something far more dangerous is nearby. He pushes his senses to their absolute limit, desperately searching for the darkness. His heart pounds as his senses finally lock on to the terrifying source of malice. He stares in disbelief, realizing the immense dark aura is emanating from Lucina herself. He recoils, his mind refusing to accept the horrifying truth his senses revealed. For a single terrifying instant, he sees a vision of pure, chaotic shadow. A swirling vortex of malevolent eyes and darkness clings tightly to her form. The vision vanishes, leaving him to wonder what she truly is. Lucina cheerfully calls his name, pulling him from his dark thoughts with a smile. She explains that it is strawberry candy, remarking on how cute it looks. He looks again, confirming that the terrifying shadowy vision is now completely gone. He tries to process what he just saw, concluding it must be a spirit. He recalls the hierarchy of spirits, each tier submitting to the one above. He remembers seeing his father's contracted upper spirit only a single time before. The power he just sensed was far greater, perhaps even a great spirit. This would explain why she is known as the blessingless girl, he realizes. He agonizes over whether to tell her, fearing the shadow might react violently. Lucina leans in close, her concerned voice asking him what is the matter. Startled, he quickly fumbles for an excuse about wanting some candy for himself. He decides to wait, resolving to tell her only when he has more proof. She innocently offers him a bite, telling him to open his mouth for her. Shizuru stares in wide-eyed shock, completely taken by surprise. With a gentle smile, Lucina explains it's a thank you for the birthday party. A fond smile crosses Shizuru's face as he thinks how bold she can be. Blushing, he playfully opens his mouth, inviting her to feed him the dango. Their sweet moment is broken by a rough voice as three thugs surround them. The leader flashes a greedy grin, commenting on their expensive-looking clothes. His cronies agree that the two rich kids are perfect targets for a ransom. Shizuru internally kicks himself for being too distracted to notice the thugs earlier. Lucina, seized by fear, instinctively grabs onto Shizuru's arm. Her hand trembles as she clutches his sleeve, her face etched with worry. He gently places his hand over hers, steadying her with his touch. Looking into her eyes, he promises her that everything is going to be okay. A thug orders them to follow, but Shizuru calmly begins to reply. His expression hidden in shadow, he simply agrees that he understands their demand. In a flash, he unleashes a powerful kick, catching the thug by surprise. His face is a mask of cold fury as he declares he'll never forgive them. One of the thugs panics, shouting that the noble boy can use magic. The leader smirks, thinking this development makes their plan even better. Shizuru warns them not to underestimate him as lightning crackles around his body. The thugs are sent flying, completely overwhelmed by his sudden show of force. He calmly dusts his hands off, considering the brief fight to be over. His expression softens as he turns to Lucina, asking if she was scared. Still trembling, Lucina can only whisper his name in response. Suddenly, her fearful expression is replaced by one of sparkling awe. She exclaims that he was incredibly cool, just like a knight saving a princess. Completely flustered by her praise, Shizuru stammers a blushing thank you. He sits on a bound thug, clenching his fists in pure embarrassment. Leaving a note for the guards, he decides it's time for them to go. He glances at the sky, realizing with a start how late it has gotten. He asks Lucina if she will accompany him to one last special place. She lets out a surprised cry as he suddenly sweeps her off her feet. He explains they're in a hurry, and she quickly agrees to his express route. He leaps across the rooftops with her in his arms as she cries out. As the sun sets, Shizuru leads Lucina up the city wall, announcing their arrival. Lucina is utterly captivated by the sight, exclaiming what a wonderful view it is. He smiles, explaining that this is his favorite spot he wanted to share with her. She looks at him with curiosity, wondering about the real Shizuru. He confesses that gazing at this scenery makes all his worries simply blow away. She recalls his reputation as a prodigy of pure and upright conduct. She had believed the rumors, thinking such a person would have no troubles. He explains he's a normal human who worries, despite some special treatment from a god. She looks at him, puzzled, and quietly questions his mention of a god. He holds out his hand, summoning the only thunder magic that exists in this world. This, he explains, is the unique power that the god bestowed upon him. The beautiful, sparkling energy reflects in her wide, curious eyes. She is completely mesmerized, whispering how beautiful the crackling magic is. He says since getting this power, seeing others strive has inspired him deeply. Looking out at the vast world, he has realized it's a waste to be worried. He clenches his fist, vowing to use this power to become stronger. His eyes blaze with conviction as he declares he'll become the world's strongest mage. Lucina is completely taken aback by his passionate, heartfelt declaration of his dream. He blushes, confident that he will be able to achieve his goal. She clenches her fists, exclaiming with absolute certainty that he can do it. She reflects on how she has come to see the real Shizuru. Despite his amazing power, she knows he works tirelessly to improve himself. He never flaunts his strength and treats everyone around him as an equal. Overwhelmed by his kindness, she tightly grips the fabric of her dress. Tears stream down her face as she sobs that she is useless, yet he is so kind. Shizuru is completely stunned by her sudden emotional outburst. He panics, frantically wondering what he should do as she continues to cry. Acting on pure instinct, he pulls her into a sudden, comforting hug. He soothes her, remembering how his own mother used to comfort him this way. He admits that he is embarrassed too, but he reassures her that it is all right. He tells her how admirable it is that she tries so hard in her small body. He calls her name, his voice filled with genuine, heartfelt respect. He guarantees she is a proud lady and should never look down on herself again. Tears of pure gratitude well in Lucina's eyes. She has waited so long for this validation. Lucina's face is awash with a deep blush, her eyes shut tightly. The words he spoke were the ones she had always longed to hear. Shizuru asks if she feels better now, and she shyly confirms she does. She asks him to forget her emotional display, but he cheerfully refuses. His firm refusal leaves her momentarily surprised. They sit on the wall as he reveals his story about the god as a secret. She wonders why he would share something so important with her. He smiles, explaining he wants his fiancée to truly know him. His sincerity touches her deeply, her eyes shimmering with emotion. She realizes for the first time she is glad to be the blessingless girl. With a radiant smile, she says they should go, happy to have met him. He looks at her, a little surprised by her newfound confidence. Their hands clasp together as they walk along the high city wall. Shizuru internally worries about the long lecture his stepmother will surely give him. In the distance, a dark, menacing castle looms under a stormy sky. Inside, a pale, elven figure on a throne wonders if the time has come. A close-up reveals his sinister, knowing smile. Shizuru groans softly as he begins to stir from a deep sleep. His eyes snap open with a sudden start. He sits up, looking around a lavish but unfamiliar room, asking where he is. He rubs his eyes, trying to piece together his scattered memories. He remembers his wonderful, carefree day with Lucina in the city. Then a memory of his stepmother's furious scolding flashes in his mind. He recalls his secret training and his reckless escape into the demon forest. He even remembers cheekily running from the servants as they called his name. He finds himself standing in a dense, unfamiliar forest. A pack of vicious wild dogs ambushes him, and he calls out to them. With a grunt of effort, he narrowly dodges a snapping jaw. He sends one of the beasts flying with a powerful, unseen blow. Another wolf howls from a rocky perch, summoning its packmates. He is now completely surrounded by the snarling monsters. He grins, deciding this is a perfect chance to test a new technique. He summons a crackling whip of energy, crying out its name, Thunder Snake! The electric tendril lashes through the air toward a surprised wolf. The beast is thrown back, its body convulsing from the powerful shock. Shizuru cheers, delighted that his attack was a direct hit. Standing alone, he notes that he is getting much better at using his power. He reflects that this open space is much better for practice. Yet he notices the forest is strangely quiet, with very few monsters. He feels that something is not just quiet, but fundamentally wrong. He stops abruptly, the unnerving sensation of being watched prickling his skin. His magical senses fail him. He realizes relying on them alone is a problem. Deciding to head back, he wipes his brow, tired from his escape. As he turns to leave, he lets out a small sound of surprise. An ornate, freestanding mirror has mysteriously appeared in the clearing. He stares at it, baffled by the presence of a mirror in the forest. He is absolutely certain that it was not there just moments before. The mirror's murky surface is deeply suspicious, yet it seems to call to him. His boundless curiosity begins to overwhelm his sense of caution. He decides to give in, reaching out to touch it for just a second. The mirror erupts in a flash of light, pulling him from the world. He glimpses an ornate, unfamiliar interior as he tumbles through space. He lands on a hard floor, realizing his mistake as he looks around. He wonders if he was summoned here by some unknown force. Standing on a grand balcony, he questions where on earth he could be. He peers through a large window, confirming this is not the demon forest. The sky outside is dark and overcast, unlike the clear day he remembers. An immense magical pressure weighs on him, growing stronger as he looks on. He recalls the dark shadow clinging to Lucina, recognizing the immense power. He senses the source of this power lies beyond a pair of large doors. His hand trembles slightly as he prepares to face the unknown. He clutches the pendant on his chest, admitting to himself that he is scared. The heavy doors swing open, revealing a dark, cavernous room. At the far end, a figure is seated upon a grand throne. The pale elf greets him, calling him the chosen child of the Thunder God. Shizuru stares, shocked that this stranger knows his greatest secret. He asks if the being is a spirit, and the elf seems impressed by his insight. He realizes this intelligent being must be a powerful upper spirit. Overwhelmed, he instinctively apologizes for his rude intrusion. The spirit rises from his throne and commands Shizuru to follow him. Shizuru follows cautiously, wondering where he is being led. He knows he stands no chance in a fight, nor can he hope to escape. He curses his own foolish curiosity for getting him into this mess. With no other choice, he steps into the adjoining room. He finds himself in an incredibly opulent and well-furnished sitting room. He remains silent and alert, warily observing his strange host. The spirit appears behind him, cheerfully asking what he thinks of the room. Shizuru cautiously compliments the fine furniture and excellent taste. He cuts himself off, trying to focus on the more important situation. The spirit is delighted, admitting he's nervous as this is his first guest. With a snap of his fingers, he decides to serve some special tea. A fine porcelain tea set magically materializes in midair. Shizuru watches in stunned silence as tiny lower spirits pour the tea. The spirit casually gestures for him to sit down and make himself comfortable. Shizuru feels no hostility, but rather a strange, almost frantic welcome. He takes a seat at the table, his posture still tense and wary. The spirit tells him to drop the formality, declaring they are like brothers. Shizuru is bewildered, wondering what he could possibly mean. The spirit decides to properly introduce himself while the tea is prepared. He reveals his true identity, the great spirit who commands thunder. Shizuru gasps, realizing that his unique power has a divine origin. He recalls that the world is governed by 6 core elements. Each of these elements is ruled by a corresponding great spirit. These beings are like gods, creators who have existed since the world began. The revelation leaves him completely speechless and wide-eyed with shock. He had wondered if he was the only thunder user, and now he knows why. The great spirit then strikes a pose and proudly declares his age. Shizuru, utterly confused, asks him to repeat what he just said. The spirit reiterates that he is one of the 7 pillars of the world. Then, with a final sparkling flourish, he bellows that he is 8 years old. A strange smile forms on Shizuru's face. He realizes he didn't mishear a word. He cautiously asks if this makes them peers, earning a glare of indignant confusion. Realizing his slip-up, Shizuru quickly clarifies that he meant they are the same age. The spirit's face lights up with joy, enthusiastically agreeing that they are peers. Shizuru sits in stunned silence as the gleeful spirit wags his draconic tail. The spirit gestures to a table laden with fresh tea and delicious-looking scones. With a confident smile, he invites the boy to relax and enjoy the refreshments. Shizuru finds it impossible to relax, but hesitantly accepts the offer of tea. The tea is surprisingly delicious, and the spirit beams with pride at his reaction. He proudly boasts that his spirit scoured the country for the finest delicacies. Feeling embarrassed, Shizuru asks the spirit to simply call him by his name. The spirit agrees, then considers what Shizuru should call him in return. A flicker of sadness crosses the spirit's face as he thinks for a moment. He confesses that he doesn't have a name, leaving Shizuru utterly shocked. The Thunder God simply created him and then unceremoniously tossed him into the world. Shizuru is appalled to learn that a god would just toss out a great spirit. With sudden inspiration, the spirit demands that Shizuru, his master, name him. He explains their bond is like family, so Shizuru is the only one fit to name him. Shizuru leaps to his feet, frantically telling the excited spirit to wait a moment. He clutches his head, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of new, confusing information. The Great Spirit simply looks on, genuinely puzzled by the boy's frantic reaction. The spirit asks what the Thunder God told him, but Shizuru knows very little. He was simply given the blessing of thunder and sent to this new world. The spirit ponders for a moment, deciding where to begin his complex story. He explains that this world was originally composed of only 6 core elements. Shizuru's birth with thunder powers was an unforeseen irregularity in the world's design. The Thunder God himself panicked upon realizing this, proving even gods can make mistakes. Creating a new spirit requires immense energy, a feat that bends the world's rules. But what if one used a powerful, pre-existing being as a catalyst for creation? A horrifying realization begins to dawn on Shizuru as the pieces connect. The Great Spirit closes his eyes, confirming the boy's terrible, unspoken suspicion. The catalyst was the legendary and terrifying ash dragon, Digzalaria. Shizuru stares in horror, remembering the beast that attacked him on his day of birth. The spirit explains the Thunder God used a rampaging dragon's magic to create him. He cheerfully adds that his draconic horns are a remnant of that black dragon. Shizuru realizes the spirit is 8 because he was born when he was reincarnated. Overwhelmed by this revelation, Shizuru lets out a weary sigh of exhaustion. He apologizes, admitting the cosmic scale of the story has completely tired him out. The spirit declares this a crisis, insisting he must eat something to recover his strength. A platter of exquisite chocolate cake magically appears, floating towards their table. Shizuru takes a piece, whispering to himself that this is his favorite dessert. The camera focuses on the rich, high-class chocolate sweets, fit for nobility. The spirit savors a bite, praising his thunder spirits for finding such a delicacy. He wisely asks Shizuru if eating sweets helps with fatigue, as he has heard. Shizuru gives a happy, simple nod, confirming that he is feeling much better. The spirit internally praises his own thoughtfulness, noting he hardly seems 8 years old. He snaps back to his main point, excitedly demanding Shizuru think of a name. Shizuru closes his eyes and hums, pondering the incredibly important task before him. The spirit's expression hardens, annoyed by Shizuru's polite and humble tone. He insists that they are equals and that Shizuru doesn't need to be so formal. Shizuru asks if he means formal language, explaining it as a sign of respect. The spirit furiously rejects this, shouting that such formalities are completely unnecessary between them. Shizuru nervously agrees, deciding it's best not to argue with the powerful being. The spirit is pleased as Shizuru privately concludes he is definitely an 8-year-old. Shizuru considers names from Thunder mythology, from Zeus and Thor to Fafnir. An idea finally crystallizes in his mind: the Thunder Dragon Spirit, Vritra. The spirit is immediately captivated by the sound of the name, declaring it a good one. Shizuru panics, realizing with a jolt that he had spoken his thoughts aloud. Vritra says the name resonates with his heart, a sentiment Shizuru internally dismisses. As Vritra repeats the name, Shizuru tries to interrupt him, yelling for him to wait. Shizuru insists a name is for life and that he should choose more carefully. A sharp, decisive smile spreads across the spirit's face as he says his mind is made up. With lightning crackling around him, he proudly proclaims himself Vritra, the Thunder Dragon Spirit. Shizuru sweats, figuring if Vritra himself is happy with the choice, it must be fine. Vritra throws his head back and lets out a booming, triumphant laugh of pure joy. His laughter cuts off as he suddenly remembers he must repay Shizuru for this gift. Shizuru, holding his dessert, insists the delicious chocolate cake is payment enough. While Shizuru savors the cake, Vritra watches him, a skeptical look on his face. Suddenly, Vritra erupts, declaring that such a simple trade is completely unacceptable. He leans in close, offering to grant any wish for the startled Shizuru. A tiny, cheerful Vritra senses an idea forming and urges him to ask. Shizuru falls silent for a moment, his expression turning serious. He looks up and asks if it is possible for him to defeat a great spirit. The question stuns Vritra, who recoils and shouts that he has no idea. He explains his own inexperience, having only existed for 8 years. Vritra then proudly demands praise for his logical, adult-like assessment of the situation. He adds that the outcome would depend on whether the opponent has a contract. The gods, he explains, limit the power of great spirits to protect the world. To unleash their full power, they must await a crisis or find a mortal contractor. The contractor's own strength, Vritra notes, is also a crucial factor. Even with a pact, Shizuru couldn't wield Vritra's full might, but would still be strong. He concludes that if the enemy is without a contractor, victory is possible. Vritra's eyes narrow as he asks if Shizuru is truly planning such a fight. He listens intently as Shizuru explains the shadow that plagues the young girl. Vritra deduces that this shadow is likely a great spirit of immense power. Shizuru asks if it's possible for a great spirit to have a child. Vritra explains that spirits are free beings, not bound by any grand mission. He muses that the shadow must have grown incredibly fond of the girl. Shizuru wonders if the spirit is waiting for its vessel to mature before making a contract. A sound of determination escapes his lips as his resolve hardens. Clenching his fists, Shizuru formally asks the Great Spirit for his help. Vritra agrees with a wide, instantaneous grin, shocking Shizuru with his speed. The spirit confidently states that they understand each other without needing words. Shizuru cheerfully admits he has no idea what Vritra is thinking, but agrees. Vritra correctly intuits Shizuru's desire to save the girl by defeating her shadow. With a gentle, heartfelt smile, Shizuru confirms this is his wish. Vritra graciously accepts, offering to lend his incredible power to the boy. A wicked, sharp-toothed grin spreads across his face as he anticipates the battle. He suddenly erupts into a booming laugh, startling Shizuru with his raw excitement. Vritra grins, declaring their first opponent, a provisional great spirit, is a worthy match. Vritra's large, clawed hand looms over a tiny, questioning Shizuru. Shizuru, blushing furiously, tells the lounging Vritra to stop talking about the name. Vritra is suddenly struck by a brilliant idea, his expression lighting up. He slyly suggests that when people cooperate, they join hands like this. Shizuru agrees with a gentle, trusting smile, reaching out to accept the offer. Their hands clasp firmly, and the pact between them is officially sealed. Vritra cheerfully reveals the contract is unbreakable, much to Shizuru's jagged shock. Back at the grand and imposing four-flare estate, a new chapter begins. Shizuru sits alone on a sofa, his expression pensive and deeply troubled. He mutters that he overdid it, just as Marl appears behind him. Marl calls his name with a sweet yet terrifyingly furious smile on her face. After the contract, Shizuru is startled by Marl's simmering anger towards him. He recalls being captured in the forest and placed under strict house arrest. Marl confirms the head knight was punished, adding that she is also angry. Shizuru tries to appease her with a bright smile, insisting he is reflecting. Her face darkens ominously as she questions his use of the phrase this time. He looks up at her, small and frightened, whispering her name in alarm. She looms over him, shouting that his cute act is useless this time. The argument involves not just Shizuru, but Marl and the others as well. Vritra, in his small form, worries about having his meals withheld as punishment. Marl reassures the little Vritra-chan that she wouldn't go quite that far. Vritra is relieved, but Marl sternly insists that he must reflect too. Shizuru watches in disbelief, thinking of this creature acting like a common mascot. An image of Vritra's true, powerful form contrasts with his current tiny one. Marl cuddles the tiny dragon, declaring him an adorable pet of the house. Shizuru quietly asks Vritra if he feels no shame acting like a freeloader. Vritra proudly declares that he is a growing 8-year-old, so it's fine. A maid enters the room to announce that Shizuru has a visitor waiting. Shizuru knows that if anything happened to him, his mother would be devastated. Marl, with a slight blush, insists that she would be sad as well. Her earnest declaration leaves a startled Shizuru completely speechless for a moment. They both react in shock, realizing Lucina has been standing there listening. Mortified at being seen lectured, Shizuru clutches his head in embarrassment. Marl playfully encourages them to flirt, leaving a confused Lucina to ponder the word. Shizuru scolds Marl for teaching Lucina strange words, insisting he was just being lectured. He asks if she came to visit Vritra, and she shyly confirms it. Lucina happily cuddles Vritra, who protests being treated like a little doll. She marvels that the baby dragon can talk, while Vritra tells her to stop. Despite his protests, the little dragon is clearly enjoying all the attention. Lucina recites the cover story, and Shizuru internally confirms that was the setup. Vritra corrects her, proudly stating that he was the one who chose Shizuru. He declares that Shizuru is strong and will one day be worthy of him. Lucina's eyes sparkle with admiration as she agrees that Shizuru is amazing. Vritra smugly agrees while Shizuru tells them to stop because it's embarrassing. As Lucina continues her praise, Shizuru realizes they are both just teasing him. He watches the two of them together with a small, fond smile. Lucina sits contentedly with the little dragon, thinking what a lovely sight it is. A maid interrupts the peaceful moment, reminding Shizuru that it is time. Lucina asks if he has an appointment and prepares to take her leave. Shizuru flashes a bright smile, inviting her to come along with him. Confused but agreeable, Lucina accepts his unexpected invitation to join him. They arrive at a door, where he announces their arrival to his mother. Inside, his mother Alina waits with a serene and gentle smile. From her wheelchair, she warmly greets Lucina, apologizing for the delayed meeting. Elena kindly tells her not to be nervous, asking if she may touch her. She gently cups the young girl's cheek, making Lucina blush from the kindness. Elena compliments her lovely face and her beautiful, silky black hair. Lucina explains it's a mix from her parents, a color Elena calls wonderful. Shizuru watches, impressed at how easily his mother has eased Lucina's tension. Elena offers to share baby stories about Shizuru, much to Lucina's delight. A horrified Shizuru protests, exclaiming that his mother is going too far. Elena expresses her relief that her son has such a wonderful fiancé. Lucina thanks her, feeling unworthy due to her lack of magical blessing. Elena's expression turns serious as she addresses the young Lucina directly. She explains that a person's true worth is defined by the happiness they create. Marl asks Lucina if there is anyone in particular who makes her happy. Lucina looks down, shyly considering the question with a thoughtful expression. Elena smiles, gently prompting her to think of someone besides her father. With sad eyes, Lucina quietly admits that there is no one else. Elena finds her answer strange, which in turn confuses the young girl. Shizuru feigns being hurt, reminding her that she is forgetting her fiancé. Marl chimes in enthusiastically, declaring her own love for Lucina. Shizuru quietly agrees with Marl's enthusiastic assessment of the situation. He admits to a blushing Lucina that he truly likes seeing her smile. Marl gasps dramatically, amazed that he is getting angry on Lucina's behalf. Elena smiles, saying she has grown very fond of Lucina after their talk. She embraces Lucina, telling her to be confident as the Four Flares are her allies. Tears well in Lucina's eyes as she whispers the word mother in awe. Lucina apologizes for her outburst, but Elena is not bothered by it. Elena dismisses her apology, saying Lucina is already like a daughter to her. As they depart, Elena thanks them and invites them to visit again soon. As they walk down the corridor, Shizuru suddenly stops in his tracks. He turns to a quiet Lucina and asks if she has gotten tired. She explains it was not fatigue, but rather a sigh of deep admiration. She gushes about how wonderful Elena is, and Shizuru wholeheartedly agrees. He sighs that his father was lucky, and Lucina expresses her relief. He admits it has been a long time since he saw his mother smile. Lucina stops, realizing her condition is due to the dragon attack's after effects. He explains his mother was injured, protecting him from the thunder god's power. He doesn't resent the god, as his intervention saved all of their lives. He thinks that if he hadn't been there, his mother could have escaped unharmed. The dark thought spirals, imagining her healthy and happy if he never existed. He clenches his fist tightly, unable to stop the overwhelming wave of guilt. Arcs of raw lightning erupt from his hand as his power surges uncontrollably. He desperately yells for Lucina to stay back and go get Marl for help. He clutches his arm in pain, angry at himself for losing control again. He calls himself pathetic, just as a gentle hand reaches out toward him. Lucina embraces him from behind, and the chaotic energy around him instantly vanishes. Utterly stunned and blushing, he can only stammer her name in confusion. He warns her that it's dangerous, that he cannot control his immense power. In a moment of quiet strength, Lucina closes her eyes, reassuring him that she is perfectly fine. Shizuru is struck by a vivid memory of his mother, Elena, holding him and saying the same thing. Lucina says she now understands the source of the sadness she always saw in him. She gently reminds him of his past words that they share a community of fate. She asks him to take responsibility for that declaration and overcome this burden with her. Resting her head on his shoulder, she solidifies their pact, and he quietly agrees. Later, walking through the hall, she is glad he has recovered, and he confirms he is fine. Shizuru suddenly panics, asking if his chaotic surge of lightning had hurt her. Lucina puffs out her chest proudly, insisting that she is tougher than she looks. He looks at her, a new and important thought beginning to form in his mind. Lucina looks up at him, asking him to tell her more about himself. She explains that she was happy to learn about his vulnerabilities. She wants to know everything about the god, his power, and the terrifying dragon. Shizuru is deeply touched by her sincerity, a faint blush warming his cheeks. He agrees to tell her his story, even if he thinks it isn't a very cool one. Lucina's eyes shine with genuine happiness as she eagerly says yes. The scene shifts, showing the grand sunlit architecture of the Fourflair estate. Glenn appears with a wide grin, announcing a family trip to make some memories. He suggests they visit a scenic spot to deepen the bonds between their two families. With a decisive fist pump, he declares that the matter is settled and they will depart. A magnificent carriage drawn by two white horses travels along a lush forest path. Inside, Shizuru apologizes for his father's boisterous nature, but Lucina says she doesn't mind. She tells him she is overjoyed to be able to go on an outing with everyone. Beaming at him with a brilliant smile, she wins an enthusiastic agreement from Shizuru. However, Lord Magnus's cheerful expression fades as he addresses Shizuru with sudden gravity. The world inside the carriage seems to darken as a flashback begins. Lucina, oblivious to the shift in tone, glances over with innocent curiosity. The carriage continues on its journey, its true purpose far more serious than a simple picnic. In a study, Glenn and Lord Magnus stand over Shizuru, the atmosphere thick with tension. Glenn smiles, promising that the real fun will begin once they arrive at their destination. He reveals to the others in the carriage that this trip is not for simple sightseeing. The narrative rewinds to a few days prior, to a clandestine meeting. Lord Magnus explains that he consulted many experts, and all diagnosed Lucina with a curse. He glares down at the young boy, asking if he dares to deny his official assessment. Shizuru feels the immense, crushing pressure radiating from the powerful Marquis. Yet he stands his ground, stating he can prove what he personally witnessed. Glenn watches from his desk, a proud smirk on his face at his son's courage. Intrigued by the boy's confidence, Magnus demands to hear the full story. Shizuru begins to explain, starting from the very beginning of the matter. He recounts the events that led him to discover the entity clinging to Lucina. Magnus is aghast, asking if this being's power truly rivals that of the legendary hero. Shizuru looks up, confirming that there is no mistake. Magnus realizes with a grim expression that the information he gathered is insufficient. Shizuru internally debates telling them about Vritra, but decides it would only complicate things. Magnus leans in close, his voice filled with a desperate urgency. He asks if there is any way to drive this something from his daughter's body. Shizuru realizes with a jolt that Magnus has perceived his feelings for Lucina. He explains that a single powerful B-rank spell should be enough to exercise it. Magnus worries such a thing is hard to arrange, but wonders if Glenn is capable. Glenn eagerly offers his services, but Shizuru quickly shuts him down. The entity is a creature of the abyss, he explains, a poor match for Glenn's fire magic. Glenn sulks in his chair, clicking his tongue in disappointment. With unwavering resolve, Shizuru declares, "I will go." Lord Magnus is utterly shocked by the boy's audacious claim. He admits that he simply cannot understand Shizuru's reasoning. He questions why Shizuru would risk so much for a shallow political arrangement. He turns to Glenn, asking him to talk some sense into his precious son. Glenn leans back, a roguish glint in his eye, stating there is only one reason. He winks, revealing that Shizuru simply wants to save the girl he loves. Mortified, Shizuru loudly protests his father's blunt assessment of his feelings. He knows, however, that denying it now would be a bad move. Lord Magnus is left speechless, turning to stare out the window in contemplation. Shizuru declares that he wants to be a hero, and as one, he cannot let her suffer. He adds, flustered, that he will also do it as her fiancé. Glenn suddenly claps a hand on his son's shoulder, startling him with his approval. He proudly tells Shizuru to show them what a man he is, promising his full support. Shizuru complains about his father's childish reasoning, but Glenn just laughs it off. Lord Magnus looks down, his heart moved by the boy's pure intentions. He lets out a small, defeated laugh, his skepticism finally melting away. Shizuru worries that his heartfelt reason may have sounded too immature. Magnus laments that in a world that cannot save his daughter, something must be done. He wonders what he, as her father, should do in this impossible situation. He turns from the window, his decision made, and addresses Shizuru. The proud and powerful Marquis gets down on one knee before the young boy. Shizuru and Glenn are both stunned into silence by this profound gesture. They rush to his side, pleading with him to stop and stand up. But Lord Magnus remains kneeling, his head bowed in complete humility. He begs them, his voice thick with emotion, to save his daughter, Lucina. Shizuru looks down at the desperate father, his own expression somber and resolute. He accepts the heavy burden with a single, solemn word, yes. The flashback ends and Lucina notices Shizuru has been staring off into space. She is happily eating from a picnic basket, completely unaware of the looming conflict. He apologizes for zoning out, and she smiles, agreeing that the view is captivating. She remarks that eating outside with such beautiful scenery makes the food taste even better. The picnic basket now sits empty, their peaceful meal having come to an end. They sit together in a field of white flowers, enjoying the quiet moment. Shizuru turns to her, asking if she has ever wished she could use magic. She is taken aback, admitting that she has never even thought it was possible. After a moment of thought, she says her first wish would be for her father. She wants to finally show him that she is not the blessingless girl who has worried him. Shizuru smiles gently, touched by her selfless and noble desire. He stands up abruptly, telling her to come with him for a moment. She looks up, her expression a mixture of curiosity and trust, and agrees. He leads her away from the picnic into a field of tall grass. She asks if it's safe to be so far from their guards, but he reassures her. He turns his back to her, addressing the empty air with a simple question. Lucina is startled, her eyes widening in confusion. She wonders who on earth he could possibly be speaking to. He tells the unseen entity that if it refuses to speak, he will act. His expression hardens as he vows to drag it out by force. A low rumbling sound fills the tense, quiet clearing. Glenn confirms his men are in position and asks Magnus if he is ready. Lord Magnus affirms his resolve, stating he is counting on them. Shizuru raises his hand to the sky, calling out Vritra's name. Vritra appears with a mighty roar, announcing his supreme power. He demands everyone witness the arrival of the Thunder Dragon spirit. Shizuru stands firm amidst the crackling energy of the grand summoning. A terrified Lucina asks what is happening. Shizuru apologizes for the shock. He gives her a kind smile, assuring her that everything is all right. Lucina, seeing his resolve, puts her complete faith in his words. Shizuru thanks her, vowing to shatter the darkness for his disciple. He slams his newly formed golden staff, the Vajra, into the earth. The impact rips a shadowy entity from Lucina's very being. Shizuru charges headfirst into the swirling vortex of pure malice. He feels the corrupting magical power trying to seep into him. An unseen voice expresses its rage at the harm coming to its contractor. Vritra grabs Shizuru, pulling him back from the encroaching darkness. He roars at the shadow, calling it an insolent fool for its attack. Shizuru thanks Vritra for the save, noting the incredible malice. He is shocked to see the shadow take the form of a young girl. The darkness solidifies, revealing the figure of a girl with long dark hair. She turns to face them, her expression hostile, shocking Shizuru. He realizes this must be the entity that was lurking inside Lucina. Now Shizuru and Vritra stand ready to face their new opponent. Shizuru observes that she looks just like Lucina, only slightly older. Vritra warns him not to be deceived by the creature's appearance. Shizuru understands, sweating slightly under the immense pressure. The shadow girl asks them why they are interfering with her. She declares she will not forgive them for bothering her girl. Her eyes glow with dark power as she commands them all to die. Shizuru braces himself for the attack, calling out to Vritra. Vritra responds, calling their foe persistent as they form a defense. They resolve to push through the oncoming darkness with their full power. A massive, impenetrable dome of pure darkness envelops the clearing. The very air seems to groan under the pressure of its creation. Outside, Glenn urgently tells Magnus to look at the massive structure. Magnus stares in utter disbelief, trying to process what he is seeing. He wonders if it is a barrier, or perhaps an inescapable magic prison. He questions who could possibly wield such immense, large-scale magic. Glenn states grimly that only one person is capable of such a feat. Magnus turns to him confused, asking who he could possibly mean. Glenn reveals the caster to be Rouge, the great spirit of darkness. He thought she was defeated long ago, during the war with the hero. Realizing the danger, Glenn resolves to fight, telling the children to wait. He dashes towards the barrier but is suddenly stopped in his tracks. Magnus cries out in alarm, shouting Glenn's name in shock. Glenn is thrown back by an unseen force, unable to proceed. He curses, surprised and frustrated by the sudden intervention. A calm voice from behind him asks if he is all right. Glenn holds his head, admitting that he was saved just in time. Marl stands before him, her dagger drawn in a defensive stance. Glenn grins, telling his son's maid he is glad she wasn't hurt. Another maid shouts a warning as Marl rushes towards the barrier. Magnus recognizes her as Shizuru's attendant, stunned by her actions. He recalls that Shizuru possesses the rare blessing of thunder. He had assumed Marl was just a skilled guard, but now sees more. Glenn laughs, explaining to Magnus that Marl's skills are his own work. He proudly confirms that his son's attendant is incredibly strong. He grins fiercely, impressed by the audacity of anyone who would attack him. Marl and Magnus exchange a look. She knows this situation is bad. She orders everyone to evacuate, to get away from the dome immediately. A knight relays the order to retreat, citing it comes from Glenn himself. Magnus realizes he is about to witness a hero's annihilation magic. As the others fall back, Marl prays for Shizuru's safety. Her thoughts are only of her young master, Shizuru, trapped inside. Within the dome, Shizuru wonders if his last attack was successful. The story continues, focusing on the trajectory of the Thunder Emperor. The Shadow Girl Rouge coldly asks them what they are. Vritra states that a human child is no Thunder Dragon. Rouge notes with disdain that a being like Vritra was recently born. She turns away, dismissing them as irrelevant to her goals. She smiles cruelly, certain that they are all about to die. With a single gesture, she unleashes a storm of shadowy daggers. Shizuru instantly reinforces his body with lightning to evade the attack. He moves like a blur, weaving through the deadly projectiles. Annoyed, Rouge calls him a nimble brat and prepares a new attack. Shizuru continues to dodge as the barrage of daggers intensifies. He looks up in alarm as a rain of blades ascends from above. He is forced to create a crackling thunder barrier to defend himself. Rouge smiles, impressed, and offers to increase the attack's intensity. The barrier begins to crack and shatter under the immense pressure. Shizuru strains, realizing there are simply too many daggers to block. His protective barrier shatters completely, leaving him vulnerable. Rouge laughs, having found an opening in his frantic defense. She unleashes a concentrated blast of dark energy directly at him. Shizuru dodges and lunges forward, shouting for her to die. A confident, knowing smile touches his lips as his plan unfolds. He blocks her dagger of bloodlust with a newly formed lightning shield. Rouge shouts in disbelief. Stunned, he blocked her attack with a shield. He rushes past her defenses while she is still reeling from shock. He swings his staff, yelling that now is his chance to strike. Rouge is startled by his sudden shift in tactics and speed. Shizuru presses his relentless assault, keeping her on the back foot. He knows he cannot afford to give her a single moment to recover. Their weapons clash in a furious exchange, sparks of light and dark erupting. The two are a blur of motion, locked in a deadly, high-speed dance. His crackling staff meets her dark blade with immense force. The pure energy of his lightning magic courses through his weapon. Rouge grits her teeth, muttering that his thunder is annoying. Shizuru knows his larger weapon is slow, thinking a sword is more agile. The Shadow Girl taunts Shizuru, saying if she closes the distance, he's finished. She screams with feral intensity, declaring that the battle is now over. Shizuru grins, retorting that her weapon is no threat unless it's a spear. She is stunned by his unexpected confidence and impossibly quick reaction. She scoffs at his staff, easily deflecting what she calls a pathetic attack. Shizuru summons a massive lightning battle axe, roaring as he brings it down. She leaps back, parrying the heavy blow, realizing it was another clever feint. Shizuru clicks his tongue in frustration, annoyed his trick was seen through again. She wonders what he is, confused by his constantly changing, unpredictable weapons. Rouge, the great spirit of darkness, watches the unfolding battle with a grim expression. She notes that Shizuru has a contract with Vritra, doing what no human should. Vritra observes that Shizuru is fighting on equal terms, believing he has a chance. Rouge remains silent, her back turned, sensing the gravity of the situation. She thinks to herself that this fight is far more severe than it appears. Shizuru relentlessly attacks, swinging his axe again and again as she parries each blow. The Shadow Girl taunts him, asking if he will just keep using the same trick. Shizuru smirks, replying that if that's what she thinks, he has a surprise. He throws his staff, but it's another diversion, a flash of light in the dark. He unleashes a new attack, Thunder Snake, sending lightning into the ground itself. She is surprised, wondering if he has yet another variation of weapon attacks. She smirks, thinking it's nothing special now that she's used to his tricks. Shizuru pants heavily, the continuous barrage of attacks draining his stamina. Vritra asks Shizuru if he has finally noticed the true extent of her power. The Shadow Girl calmly explains her power is overwhelmingly superior to their own. Vritra notes that Shizuru is at a severe disadvantage against such an opponent. Shizuru realizes with awe that this is the true crushing power of a great spirit. He calls out to his opponent's mother, the great spirit of darkness, Rouge. The Shadow Girl's expression turns to shock, her gaze snapping toward her mother. Shizuru apologizes with a carefree smile, feigning that he had made a mistake. He suddenly drops to his knees in a formal, deep bow of apology. He presses his head to the ground in a gesture of profound respect. She asks why he's bowing, wondering if he's reflecting on his actions. Suddenly, her body is racked with a violent electric shock, her face contorting. She lets out a pained grunt as the lightning surges uncontrollably through her legs. She gasps, wondering what is happening as her body goes numb from below. Shizuru breathes a sigh of relief, glad his unconventional plan worked perfectly. He grins, explaining that while darkness surrounded them, the ground was still there. He recalls that lightning attacks can travel through the ground, not just directly. He remembers from his past life how side flashes could electrocute people nearby. While common knowledge in Japan, this world's study of thunder is incomplete. This means that even Rouge is unaware of this phenomenon, giving him an edge. The Shadow Girl stands, her body still trembling from the lingering electrical charge. She closes her eyes, trying to endure the continuous, numbing pain from the ground. Shizuru realizes this ground attack is draining his mana and will not last long. He knows his opponent is exhausted, and this is his one and only chance. He calls out to Vritra, begging him to send every last bit of his power. Vritra warns him that it is no use. His body won't be able to handle it. Shizuru shouts back that he knows, but this is the only moment he has to act. Vritra relents with concern, telling Shizuru not to overdo it. Shizuru thanks him with a determined smile as Vritra prepares to lend his power. Shizuru roars, unleashing his ultimate technique. Lightning full burst, his body crackling. The Shadow Girl grits her teeth, furious that he has made her kneel. She seethes, declaring she will never forgive him for siding with a great spirit. She gathers a sphere of pure, crushing dark energy for her final attack. She throws the sphere of darkness into the air, preparing to unleash its power. She commands him to fall into eternal darkness as the sphere grows in intensity. She unleashes her ultimate attack, Judgment of the Glimmering Dark Star. Shizuru stands firm, his body glowing with a brilliant, star-like energy. His eyes are filled with unshakable resolve as he prepares to meet her attack. He declares he will use a sword of lightning to vanquish all evil. He roars the name of a thunder god, Takamikazuchi, swinging his electric blade. The two colossal attacks collide in a blinding, cataclysmic explosion of energy. Shizuru cries out in agony as the immense power tears through his strained body. He refuses to yield, screaming that he will absolutely not lose this fight. His mind flashes to his promise, yelling that he swore he would protect her. He screams Lucina's name, his determination fueling his final surge of power. The Shadow Girl is stunned by his incredible willpower, muttering his name in disbelief. She is thrown back by the force of his attack, her power finally wavering. She grunts in pain as she struggles to maintain her footing against his assault. Shizuru wonders if Vritra's power has finally kicked in, sensing a shift. The Shadow Girl collapses, her body unable to withstand the overwhelming power. He asks what's wrong, noticing that her attack has suddenly become much weaker. Vritra tells him to look closely at their opponent to see her true state. The Shadow Girl struggles, cursing the damage she received from Shizuru's earlier attacks. Vritra explains that she no longer has enough magic to spare for her own recovery. She grits her teeth, realizing she can't divert even a little magic to heal herself. Vritra roars, telling Shizuru that now is the time to send all his power. Vritra watches as Shizuru, already acting on instinct, pushes past his limits. He smiles, impressed that Shizuru had already begun to move before his command. Shizuru lets out a final desperate roar, unleashing an incredible surge of lightning. The Shadow Girl can only watch in disbelief as the attack rushes towards her. The wave of pure, untamed lightning completely engulfs her, the impact shaking the dome. Vritra stands ready, watching the aftermath of the devastating final clash. Shizuru wonders if he has finally done it, if the battle is truly over. Through the smoke, he sees her, kneeling but not completely defeated. She grits her teeth, seething that she was overwhelmed by a mere brat. Shizuru pants, realizing she is still standing and that this might be very bad. He tries to move, but his body is at its absolute limit. He struggles to push himself forward, determined to continue the fight. He screams that he can still go on, refusing to give up. Vritra observes that Shizuru's attacks have become simple, a sign he's at his limit. He knows that this is a battle of attrition, a test of pure will. He notes that their opponent is in the exact same, exhausted condition. The Shadow Girl snarls that she is just as tired, calling him persistent. She demands to know who he is and why he keeps interfering with that girl. Shizuru angrily retorts that she is the one interfering with Lucina's life. His accusation strikes a nerve, leaving her completely stunned and speechless. She screams at him, asking what a brat who knows nothing could possibly understand. Her anger fades into weary resignation, and she agrees to tell him the truth. She reveals that Lucina is not blessingless, but blessed by the spirits themselves. Shizuru and Vritra are stunned by the Shadow Girl's impossible revelation. His mind flashes back to a book he read on the blessing of the spirits. The text described how some are so loved by spirits, they gain incredible power. But these blessed children are fated to live tragically short lives. Their mortal bodies cannot endure the constant torrent of spiritual thoughts and emotions. He realizes with dawning horror that Lucina is one of these children. The Shadow Girl confirms it, a vision of Lucina appearing behind her. She explains that this is precisely why she has always protected her. It was a solemn promise she made to her most beloved friend. She clutches her chest, declaring it was all for her promise to Maria. The world dissolves, pulling us into the depths of a long and tragic memory. We see a peaceful forest clearing, bathed in the soft light of the past. A younger wounded Rouge sits alone, leaning against an ancient tree. She laments her failure, the great spirit of darkness brought low by defeat. She recalls siding with the Demon King, thinking it would be an amusing diversion. Filled with rage, she vows to kill the hero's child and destroy everything. But her thirst for vengeance quickly fades into weary resignation. She looks at her fading hand, knowing she cannot fulfill her threat. She quietly accepts that this is her end, her final moments alone. She muses that when a great spirit dies, a new one is simply reborn. The thought brings a bitter smile. Her entire existence feels like a joke. She admits she never found true joy, only an endless, unfulfilled emptiness. Overwhelmed by despair, she screams that she hates dying alone and miserable. Her strength finally gone, she collapses unconscious onto the forest floor. Her vision darkens as the last of her consciousness fades away. As she fades, a gentle voice asks who she is. The world around her is consumed by complete and total darkness. The memory rewinds to her first fateful meeting with a young girl named Maria. Maria Rufus was a Marquis's daughter who possessed the blessing of darkness. Rouge remembers how Maria would visit her in the forest every single day. Spending time with Maria, who shared her dark blessing, helped Rouge to heal. Once she recovered, Rouge felt she no longer had a reason to stay. Yet a strange, unfamiliar emotion made her hesitate to leave. She asked Maria why she keeps returning with such frantic energy. Maria shyly confesses that she would be utterly lost if Rouge were gone. Touched by her words, Rouge assures her she would never just disappear. She agrees to stay a while longer, feigning it's only because she's bored. Maria tries to hide her overwhelming joy, clearing her throat with a cough. Maria was born with a frail body due to her powerful spiritual blessing. This unique condition was the reason she was able to find the dying Rouge. Unloved by her family, Maria spent her days in solitude, just like Rouge. Once healed, Rouge tells Maria she no longer needs to visit her. Maria thinks of how Rouge needs her company, not her power, bringing her joy. Rouge muses on the fleeting nature of human life, a mere instant to her. But Maria's kindness makes her reconsider her solitary existence. Maria playfully hits her, scolding her for thinking such sad thoughts. She invites Rouge to her home, saying she can live at the estate. Maria is stunned by the offer, her eyes sparkling with pure delight. She twirls happily, declaring that now they can be together forever. Years later, after the long war between humans and demons had finally ended, a grown Maria announces to Rouge that she is getting married. Rouge stands silently by a window, her heart aching at the news. She asks who the man is, threatening to put him to sleep forever. Over the years, Maria had become like a sister and a daughter to her. Rouge asks if she is truly fine with becoming a mere concubine. Maria explains it is her way of repaying her parents for their kindness. She gushes about her fiancé Magnus, calling it a wonderful match. Rouge feigns indifference, saying she'll just destroy the territory if trouble arises. Maria smiles warmly, thanking her for her concern. Rouge resolves that it doesn't matter. She will simply follow Maria wherever she goes. But years later, at the Grand Lorelei estate, things take a turn. Rouge is utterly shocked to learn that Maria is pregnant. She screams at her friend, saying her frail body cannot possibly survive childbirth. Maria calmly replies that she knows, but is determined to give birth anyway. Rouge watches her friend's serene resolve, unable to change her mind. Frustrated and terrified, Rouge tells her to do as she pleases. Maria admits that either way, she doesn't have much time left to live. Rouge looks down, silently acknowledging the painful truth. She tells Maria there is no need to rush towards her own death. Maria clutches her dress, insisting she still has things she wants to do. She confesses she has one lingering regret, and Rouge leans in to listen. Maria's greatest fear is that Rouge will be left all alone. Rouge shouts in protest, denying she would ever feel lonely without her. Maria gently takes her hand, saying it's no use pretending to be strong. She knows Rouge's heart after all the time they spent together. Wiping a tear from Rouge's eye, she tells her not to ruin her beautiful face. Rouge begs her to choose life, even a little longer for her sake. Maria reassures her, saying it's all right because her child will be there. Her heart and will shall be passed down through her child's lineage. She promises that this way, Rouge will never be alone again. Rouge protests that no one can ever replace Maria in her heart. Maria takes her hand again, asking her for one last favor. She asks Rouge to help her choose a name for her unborn child. Rouge's heart skips a beat at the deeply intimate request. Maria asks if it's a boy or girl. Rouge confirms it is a girl. Rouge softly speaks the name that has come to her, Lucina. Maria explains the name's meaning, a goddess of birth and of the moon. She asks if there is anything else she can do for Rouge. Rouge admits that when they first met, she had a thought about her. She saw a girl with a gentle moon-like light who saved her from despair. Maria is overjoyed that Rouge thought of her in such a beautiful way. Flustered, Rouge agrees to protect Maria's child, feigning she has nothing better to do. Maria is overcome with happiness, her gratitude overflowing. She hugs Rouge tightly, thanking her and telling her how much she loves her. The memory fades to Maria lying peacefully in a coffin, surrounded by flowers. Rouge gazes at her friend's still face, her own expression unreadable. "Look," she says to the empty room. She couldn't endure it after all. She places a lily in Maria's hand, vowing to protect her child. She glances toward the nursery, noting the child's resemblance to her mother. She looks at the cradle, knowing a difficult and lonely vigil lies ahead. Newborn Lucina coos, her tiny hand reaching for the dancing spirits in the air. Rouge watches, realizing with sorrow that the child has inherited the fatal spirit blessing. In a flash of horror, she understands the terrible fate awaiting Maria's precious daughter. The spirits, drawn by the infant's power, zip through the air, their love a deadly curse. But she hardens her resolve. This time, she will be there to protect her. Her hand gently closes around the infant's, a silent promise of eternal guardianship. A soft, loving smile graces her lips as she gazes upon the sleeping child. She vows to shield her from the spirit's love and the greed of humankind. She whispers that she will erase all obstacles, telling the child to sleep soundly. All for the sake of the child she would protect, Lucina.